In the scorching heat of the Arabian desert, where the sand dunes shift like living creatures and the horizon shimmers with impossible mirages, the ancient Bedouin tribes knew something that most of the world has forgotten. They knew that fire is not just an element, it is a birthplace. A realm where beings of terrible beauty and unfathomable power come into existence. These are not the cartoon genies of Hollywood movies. These are the Djinn, creatures forged from smokeless flame, and their story is one of the most profound and terrifying chapters in the mythology of the Middle East. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, and if you're listening right now, share your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing how far these stories reach. Tonight, we journey into the blazing heart of Islamic folklore to meet beings whose very existence challenges everything we think we know about the nature of consciousness and free will. We will explore creatures who possess intelligence that rivals our own, powers that dwarf our understanding, and a relationship with humanity that is as complex as it is dangerous. This is not just a tale of ancient superstition. This is an investigation into a cosmology that spans centuries, influences billions of lives, and offers a radically different perspective on what it means to share this universe with other forms of intelligent life. But before we can understand the Djinn, we must first understand the fundamental question that has haunted humanity since we first learned to think. Are we alone? Not in the cosmos, but here on Earth itself. Are we the only intelligent beings inhabiting this realm? Or do we share our reality with other forms of consciousness that exist just beyond the edges of our perception? The Djinn offer a profound answer to this question, and it is not the answer most of us expect. The word Djinn comes from the Arabic root, meaning to hide or conceal. These are beings who exist in the shadows of our reality, inhabiting the spaces between what we can see and what we cannot, between the material and the spiritual. They are mentioned over 20 times in the Quran, described not as metaphors or symbols, but as real, living entities with their own societies, their own moral choices, and their own relationship with the divine. According to Islamic theology, they were created from fire before humanity was ever formed from clay, making them our elder siblings in the grand design of creation. To truly comprehend the nature of the Djinn, we must abandon our Western notions of supernatural beings as either purely good angels or purely evil demons. The Djinn occupy a middle ground that is far more complex and far more human than we might expect. They are beings of free will, just as we are. They can choose to follow the path of righteousness or fall into corruption. They can be believers or disbelievers, helpers or adversaries. Some serve God faithfully, while others rebel against divine order. This moral complexity makes them simultaneously fascinating and terrifying, because it means that when we encounter them, we never know which version we are meeting. The Djinn are organized into a sophisticated hierarchy that mirrors and yet transcends human society. At the bottom are the common Djinn, beings of varying power and temperament who live their lives much as we do, forming families, pursuing goals, experiencing joy and sorrow. Above them are the more powerful varieties, each with their own specializations and domains. There are the married, Djinn of immense power, who are often associated with water and can grant wishes, though always at a price. There are the Ifrit, beings of fire and fury, who are known for their strength and their volatile tempers. And there are the ghouls, shape-shifting Djinn who haunt the wilderness and prey upon travelers. But perhaps the most intriguing aspect of Djinn society is their relationship with knowledge and power. Unlike humans, who must struggle to learn and grow throughout their lives, many Djinn possess abilities that seem godlike to our limited perspective. They can travel vast distances in the blink of an eye, transform their appearance at will, and manipulate the physical world in ways that defy our understanding of natural law. Yet this power comes with its own burdens and responsibilities, and the jinn who wield it are subject to the same divine judgment as any other conscious being. The stories tell us that jinn live in a parallel world that overlaps with our own, but remains largely invisible to human senses. They have their own cities, their own kingdoms, their own complex political structures. Some of these kingdoms are said to be more advanced than any human civilization, while others are primitive and savage. The jinn can see us clearly, but we can only glimpse them under special circumstances, when the veil between worlds grows thin, or when they choose to reveal themselves to us. This one-sided visibility creates a profound imbalance in the relationship between our two species. The jinn can observe human behavior, study our weaknesses, and intervene in our affairs, while we remain largely unaware of their presence. This has led to countless tales of jinn who become fascinated with individual humans, sometimes helping them, sometimes tormenting them, and sometimes developing complex emotional relationships that blur the lines between species. The most famous of these relationships, of course, involves King Solomon, known in Arabic as Sulayman. According to Islamic tradition, Solomon was granted power over the jinn by God himself, making him perhaps the only human in history to command these beings as equals rather than as supplicants. The stories of Solomon and his jinn servants reveal much about the nature of these creatures and their capabilities. Solomon's jinn could perform tasks that would be impossible for humans. They built his great temple in Jerusalem, transported massive stones across vast distances, and created works of art and architecture that defied the limitations of human craftsmanship. But they were not mindless slaves. They had their own opinions, their own desires, and their own subtle ways of resisting commands they found distasteful. The relationship between Solomon and his jinn was one of mutual respect and carefully negotiated power, a delicate balance that required wisdom, strength, and constant vigilance. One of the most revealing stories tells of how Solomon discovered that one of his most trusted jinn advisors had been deceiving him for years. This jinn had been manipulating information and subtly influencing decisions to serve its own agenda rather than the king's wishes. The story serves as a warning about the fundamental challenge of any relationship with the jinn. They are intelligent beings with their own motivations, and their goals may not always align with human interests. This theme of deception and hidden agendas runs throughout jinn folklore like a golden thread. These beings are master manipulators, capable of appearing in any form they choose, and skilled in the art of psychological warfare. They understand human nature intimately, having observed us for millennia, and they know exactly which buttons to press to get the reactions they desire. A jinn might appear as a beautiful woman to seduce a man away from his family, or as a wise old teacher to lead a student down a path of forbidden knowledge, or as a helpless child to exploit human compassion for their own ends. Yet for all their power and cunning, the jinn are not omnipotent. They are bound by certain rules and limitations that constrain their actions and provide humans with some measure of protection. They cannot, for instance, force a human to act against their fundamental nature or deepest beliefs. They can tempt, cajole, threaten, and deceive, but they cannot override human free will entirely. This limitation is crucial to understanding why the relationship between humans and jinn is depicted as a cosmic struggle rather than a simple case of powerful beings dominating weaker ones. The jinn are also bound by religious and spiritual laws that transcend their individual desires. A jinn who has submitted to God is constrained by divine commandments, just as any human believer would be. They cannot commit certain acts without facing the same spiritual consequences that would befall a human transgressor. This creates a fascinating paradox: beings of immense power who are nonetheless subject to the same moral universe as the rest of creation. But what happens when a jinn chooses the path of rebellion? When they decide to use their powers for selfish or malevolent purposes? This is where the stories become truly terrifying, because a jinn who has embraced evil is a formidable adversary indeed. They possess all the intelligence and cunning of their righteous counterparts, but without the moral constraints that limit their actions. These are the Djinn who become the villains of folklore, the beings who haunt lonely places and prey upon the innocent. The most powerful and terrifying of these rebellious Djinn is Iblis, known in Christian tradition as Satan. According to Islamic theology, Iblis was once among the most devoted servants of God, a Djinn of such purity and dedication that he was elevated to live among the angels themselves. But when God created humanity and commanded all beings to honor this new creation, Iblis refused. His pride would not allow him to acknowledge creatures made from clay as worthy of respect. And this act of defiance led to his banishment and transformation into the ultimate enemy of both God and humanity. The story of Iblis reveals something crucial about the nature of the Djinn, their capacity for both transcendent good and absolute evil. Unlike humans, who are limited in their ability to affect the world around them, a Djinn who chooses corruption can become a force of destruction on a cosmic scale. This is why the traditional literature treats encounters with Djinn with such caution, and why the rituals for protection against them are so elaborate and specific. The question that haunts every scholar of Djinn lore is this: how do we protect ourselves from beings who can see us, but whom we cannot see? How do we defend against creatures whose intelligence matches our own, but whose power far exceeds anything we can imagine? The answer lies not in physical barriers or weapons, but in understanding the intricate web of spiritual laws and ancient practices that govern interactions between our two worlds. The first and most fundamental principle of protection against the Djinn is knowledge itself. Ignorance is not bliss when dealing with beings who have spent millennia studying human behavior. The Djinn exploit our weaknesses, our fears, our desires, and our blind spots. But knowledge creates a kind of spiritual armor, an awareness that makes us less vulnerable to their manipulations. This is why the traditional texts place such emphasis on understanding the nature of these creatures before attempting any form of contact or defense. But knowledge alone is not enough. The Djinn respect power, and in the spiritual realm, the greatest power comes from divine connection. This is why prayer, recitation of sacred texts, and adherence to religious principles form the cornerstone of traditional protection methods. A person who is spiritually grounded, who maintains a strong connection to the divine, presents a much more formidable target than someone who is spiritually adrift. The Djinn can sense this spiritual strength, and many will choose to avoid confrontation with those who possess it, rather than risk the consequences of attacking someone under divine protection. Yet even the most devout individuals are not immune to Djinn influence. The stories are filled with accounts of holy men and women who found themselves locked in spiritual battles with these beings. The difference is that such individuals possess the tools and knowledge necessary to recognize what was happening and to fight back effectively. They understood that a confrontation with a Djinn is not a physical battle, but a contest of wills, a struggle for dominance in the realm of consciousness itself. The traditional protection rituals are elaborate affairs that involve specific words, gestures, and materials, each chosen for its symbolic significance and spiritual power. Iron, for instance, is considered particularly effective against Djinn, not because of its physical properties, but because of its symbolic association with strength and permanence. Salt is used to create barriers because of its purifying qualities and its resistance to corruption. Certain verses from sacred texts are recited because their divine origin gives them power over all created beings, including the Djinn. But perhaps the most important element of any protection ritual is intention. The Djinn are masters of reading human psychology, and they can sense fear, doubt, and uncertainty from vast distances. A person who approaches protection rituals with genuine faith and unwavering determination presents a very different target than someone who is merely going through the motions out of superstition or desperation. The Djinn respect strength of will above almost all other human qualities, and they are more likely to withdraw from a confrontation with someone who demonstrates genuine spiritual power. This brings us to one of the most controversial aspects of Djinn lore, the practice of deliberately seeking contact with these beings. Throughout history, there have been humans who, rather than seeking protection from the Djinn, have actively pursued relationships with them. These individuals, often called sorcerers or practitioners of the occult arts, believe that the power of the Djinn can be harnessed for human purposes. They seek to bind Djinn to their will, to force them into service, or to gain access to their supernatural abilities. The traditional texts are unanimous in their condemnation of such practices. They warn that attempting to control or manipulate the Djinn is not only spiritually dangerous, but ultimately futile. The Djinn are too intelligent and too powerful to remain bound against their will for long, and they inevitably find ways to turn the tables on their would-be masters. The stories of sorcerers who thought they had tamed Djinn only to find themselves destroyed by their former servants serve as cautionary tales about the folly of trying to master forces beyond human comprehension. Yet the allure of Djinn power continues to attract those who are willing to risk everything for the promise of supernatural abilities. The Djinn themselves are not passive victims in these relationships. Many actively seek out humans who are ambitious, desperate, or morally flexible enough to enter into such bargains. They present themselves as servants or allies, offering to fulfill human desires in exchange for what seems like reasonable compensation. But the price is always higher than it initially appears, and the consequences extend far beyond what the human participant could have imagined. These transactional relationships reveal something profound about the nature of both species. Humans and Djinn share certain fundamental characteristics: intelligence, ambition, the capacity for both good and evil, and the desire for power and influence. But where humans are limited by physical constraints and short lifespans, Djinn possess abilities that seem limitless and perspectives shaped by centuries or millennia of existence. This creates an inherent imbalance that makes any partnership between the species inherently unstable. The Djinn who engage in such relationships are usually not the righteous servants of God, but rather those who have chosen paths of rebellion or moral ambiguity. They see humans as tools to be used in their own cosmic struggles, pieces to be moved on a board game whose rules and objectives remain hidden from human participants. Even when they fulfill their part of a bargain, they often do so in ways that technically meet the letter of their agreement while violating its spirit, leaving their human partners with outcomes that are far different from what they expected. But not all Djinn who interact with humans are motivated by malevolence or self-interest. The traditional stories also speak of Djinn who form genuine relationships with humans based on mutual respect, shared values, or even love. These relationships are rare and fraught with complications, but they offer glimpses into what might be possible if the barriers between our two species could be overcome. The most famous of these cross-species relationships involve Djinn who fall in love with humans and choose to abandon their supernatural abilities to live as mortals. These stories are both beautiful and tragic, highlighting the sacrifices that must be made when beings from different realms attempt to bridge the gap between their worlds. The Djinn who make such a choice gives up immortality, supernatural power, and connection to their own kind in exchange for the brief, fragile experience of human love and mortality. These tales serve as profound meditations on the nature of love, sacrifice, and what it truly means to be human. They suggest that our mortality, rather than being a weakness, might actually be one of our greatest strengths. The knowledge that our time is limited gives weight and meaning to our choices in ways that immortal beings might struggle to understand. A Djinn who chooses to become mortal for love is choosing to embrace the very limitations that make human existence both precious and poignant. Yet, even these seemingly positive relationships carry warnings about the fundamental differences between our species. The jinn who chooses mortality must learn to navigate human society, human emotions, and human limitations without the benefit of supernatural power or centuries of experience. Meanwhile, the human partner must come to terms with loving someone whose true nature is alien to everything they have ever known. The cultural and psychological adjustments required on both sides are enormous, and the story suggests that such relationships succeed only when both partners are willing to completely transform themselves for the sake of their love. The geographical distribution of jinn beliefs offers another fascinating lens through which to examine these beings. While jinn are most commonly associated with the Middle East and Islamic culture, similar entities appear in the folklore of cultures across the world. The jinn of Arabian tradition, the genies of Persian stories, the afrits of North African legends, and the ghouls of Mesopotamian lore all share common characteristics while reflecting the unique cultural perspectives of their respective societies. This widespread distribution raises intriguing questions about the nature of these beings and their relationship to human consciousness. Are we dealing with a single species that has been interpreted differently by various cultures? Or are there multiple types of fire-born entities that share certain fundamental characteristics? The traditional texts suggest that jinn society itself is incredibly diverse, with different tribes and nations of jinn inhabiting different regions and interacting with local human populations in ways that reflect both their own nature and the cultural expectations of the humans they encounter. The jinn of the Arabian Peninsula are described as desert dwellers, beings of fierce independence and nomadic lifestyle who understand the harsh realities of survival in unforgiving landscapes. The jinn of Persia are often portrayed as more sophisticated and cultured, reflecting the refined literary traditions of Persian civilization. The jinn of North Africa are frequently depicted as shapeshifters and tricksters, beings whose fluid identity reflects the complex cultural crossroads of their homeland. These regional variations suggest that jinn, like humans, are shaped by their environment and their interactions with local populations. They adapt their behavior, their appearance, and even their abilities to match the expectations and fears of the humans they encounter. This adaptability makes them even more formidable as adversaries and more valuable as allies. But it also means that understanding jinn requires understanding the specific cultural context in which they operate. The evolution of jinn beliefs over time provides yet another layer of complexity to their story. The pre-Islamic Arabs knew of jinn long before the arrival of Islamic theology, but the Quran transformed these ancient spirits into something far more sophisticated and morally complex. Where earlier traditions had viewed jinn primarily as nature spirits or minor demons, Islamic theology elevated them to the status of conscious beings with souls, moral agency, and a relationship with the divine that paralleled that of humans. This theological evolution had profound implications for how humans understood their relationship with these beings. No longer were jinn simply forces of nature to be appeased or avoided. They became fellow travelers on the spiritual journey, beings whose choices and actions had cosmic significance. This shift in perspective opened up new possibilities for interaction, while simultaneously raising the stakes of any encounter. The medieval Islamic scholars who devoted their lives to understanding jinn lore recognized that these beings existed at the intersection of multiple realms of knowledge. To truly comprehend the jinn, one had to master not only theology and philosophy, but also astronomy, mathematics, and what we would now call psychology. The jinn were seen as living bridges between the material and spiritual worlds, creatures whose very existence proved that reality was far more layered and complex than ordinary perception could reveal. These scholars developed elaborate taxonomies of jinn types, each classified according to their abilities, their moral inclinations, and their preferred methods of interaction with humans. They understood that knowledge was power in the most literal sense, that accurate information about jinn nature and behavior could mean the difference between spiritual enlightenment and complete destruction. Their texts read like field guides to an invisible ecosystem, detailed manuals for navigating relationships with beings whose motivations and capabilities defied human understanding. But perhaps the most remarkable aspect of this scholarly tradition was its recognition that jinn were not static entities. Like humans, they could learn, grow, and change over time. A jinn who began as a minor trickster might evolve into a powerful teacher, while another might descend from noble service into corruption and malevolence. This capacity for transformation made every encounter with jinn unpredictable, because the being you met today might be fundamentally different from the one you encountered years before. The concept of jinn transformation leads us to one of the most disturbing aspects of their lore, the phenomenon of possession. Unlike the Hollywood depictions of demonic possession, jinn possession in traditional accounts is far more subtle and complex. A jinn does not simply invade a human body like a parasite. Instead, they form a kind of symbiotic relationship with their host, sharing consciousness and blending their supernatural abilities with human experience in ways that can be both empowering and catastrophic. The possessed individual often gains access to knowledge and abilities far beyond normal human capacity. They might suddenly speak languages they have never learned, demonstrate skills they have never practiced, or possess information about distant events and hidden secrets. But this power comes at a terrible price. The human consciousness gradually becomes subordinate to the jinn's will, and the individual's sense of identity begins to dissolve. What begins as partnership evolves into a form of psychological slavery that can persist for years or even decades. The traditional methods for treating jinn possession reveal much about how these cultures understood the relationship between consciousness and spiritual reality. Exorcism was not simply a matter of driving out an unwanted intruder, but rather a complex negotiation between multiple conscious entities. The exorcist had to determine whether the jinn had entered the relationship voluntarily or through deception, whether the human had invited the possession or fallen victim to supernatural assault, and what terms might be acceptable for ending the arrangement. Many possession cases involved jinn who had legitimate grievances against their human hosts. Perhaps the human had violated sacred spaces, disrupted jinn communities, or broken promises made in previous encounters. In such cases, the exorcism required not just spiritual power, but also justice, finding ways to address the jinn's concerns while protecting the human from further harm. These negotiations could take weeks or months, involving elaborate rituals, offerings, and carefully worded agreements that satisfied both parties. The most challenging cases involved jinn who had formed genuine emotional attachments to their human hosts. These beings refused to leave not out of malevolence but out of love, possessiveness, or a misguided desire to protect the human from harm. Such relationships created profound ethical dilemmas for exorcists, who had to balance respect for the jinn's feelings with the need to restore the human's autonomy and spiritual health. These complex possession dynamics illuminate a fundamental truth about jinn nature. They are not simply more powerful versions of humans, but beings with entirely different relationships to consciousness, identity, and embodiment. While humans experience consciousness as fundamentally individual and bounded by physical form, jinn consciousness appears to be more fluid, capable of merging, dividing, and transforming in ways that challenge our basic assumptions about the nature of self and identity. This fluid consciousness makes jinn particularly dangerous to humans who are spiritually or psychologically vulnerable. Individuals who are struggling with mental illness, addiction, grief, or spiritual crisis present opportunities for jinn who seek to experience human life more directly. The jinn may genuinely believe they are helping by offering their strength and knowledge to someone in need, but the result is almost always a loss of human autonomy, that ultimately serves neither party well. The relationship between jinn and human dreams represents another fascinating aspect of their interaction. Dreams have always been understood in Islamic tradition as a realm where the boundaries between worlds become permeable, where souls can travel beyond their physical limitations and encounter beings and realities normally hidden from waking consciousness. The jinn, with their mastery over the spaces between worlds, are natural inhabitants of the dream realm. Many of the most significant encounters between humans and jinn occur in dreams, where the usual rules of physical reality do not apply, and where jinn can appear in their true forms without causing the terror that might result from a waking encounter. In dreams, jinn can communicate more directly with humans, sharing knowledge, issuing warnings, or making offers that would be impossible to convey through ordinary means. These dream encounters often serve as tests or invitations, opportunities for jinn to evaluate human character and determine whether deeper relationships might be beneficial or dangerous. But jinn presence in dreams can also be invasive and manipulative. A malevolent jinn might use dreams to plant suggestions, create false memories, or gradually erode a person's sense of reality. The victim might begin to experience their dream life as more vivid and meaningful than their waking existence, slowly losing their grip on the distinction between the two realms. This dream manipulation is considered one of the most insidious forms of jinn influence because it attacks the very foundation of human consciousness and perception. The traditional protection methods for dream encounters with jinn involve specific prayers and rituals performed before sleep, as well as careful attention to dream content and meaning. Practitioners learn to recognize the signs of jinn presence in their dreams and develop techniques for maintaining spiritual protection even while unconscious. The most advanced practitioners can allegedly maintain full awareness during dream encounters, engaging with jinn as equals rather than as helpless victims. The role of jinn in prophecy and divination adds another layer to their relationship with human consciousness. Throughout history, humans have sought to glimpse the future, to understand hidden truths, or to gain insight into the will of the divine. The jinn, with their expanded perception and their ability to travel between realms, possess knowledge that is often unavailable to human consciousness. This has made them valuable allies for those seeking supernatural guidance, but also dangerous sources of information that may be incomplete, biased, or deliberately misleading. The jinn who involve themselves in human divination practices are rarely motivated by pure altruism. They may provide accurate information as a way of building trust before introducing more questionable guidance. They might reveal true but incomplete knowledge that leads humans to make decisions based on partial understanding. Or they may mix truth with falsehood in ways that serve their own agendas while appearing to help their human partners. The most sophisticated jinn understand that humans are particularly vulnerable to information that confirms their existing beliefs or desires. A jinn might tell a human exactly what they want to hear, providing just enough accurate detail to make the message credible while steering the human toward choices that ultimately serve the jinn's purposes. This psychological manipulation is perhaps more dangerous than overt deception because it exploits human weaknesses while maintaining the illusion of beneficial partnership. Traditional Islamic scholars warned extensively about the dangers of seeking supernatural guidance from jinn, emphasizing that such practices inevitably lead to spiritual corruption and practical disaster. They argued that divine guidance should be sought through prayer, study of sacred texts, and consultation with qualified religious authorities, not through communication with beings whose motivations and reliability remain fundamentally unknowable. Yet the allure of supernatural knowledge continues to draw humans into relationships with jinn, who claim to offer insight into hidden truths. Modern practitioners of various occult traditions often seek to contact jinn for purposes ranging from personal guidance to magical empowerment, usually with little understanding of the traditional warnings about such practices. The results, according to those familiar with jinn lore, are predictably catastrophic. though the consequences may not become apparent for years or even decades. The question of jinn reproduction and family structures opens another window into their alien nature. Unlike humans, whose reproductive cycles are tied to biological processes and limited lifespans, jinn reproduction appears to follow entirely different rules. Some traditions suggest that jinn can reproduce through acts of will rather than physical union, creating offspring that inherit specific aspects of their parents' abilities and knowledge. Others describe complex mating rituals that span centuries and involve the merger of consciousness as much as any physical process. Jinn families are said to be bound together not just by blood relationships, but by shared purposes and complementary abilities. A family of jinn might collectively oversee a particular region, with different members specializing in different aspects of the local ecosystem or human population. These family units can persist for millennia, accumulating knowledge and power that passes from generation to generation in ways that dwarf human institutional memory. The relationship between jinn parents and children also differs fundamentally from human family dynamics. Jinn offspring are not helpless infants requiring years of care and protection, but rather conscious beings who emerge with significant abilities and knowledge already intact. The parent-child relationship becomes more like a mentorship between experienced and novice practitioners of supernatural arts, with the older jinn guiding the younger in the proper use of their abilities and their understanding of their place in the cosmic order. These family structures create networks of jinn influence that span vast geographical areas and extend across multiple human generations. A human family might find itself dealing with the same jinn lineage for centuries, with different jinn family members taking interest in successive human generations. These multi-generational relationships can create complex webs of obligation, assistance, and conflict that persist long after the original human participants have died. The jinn understanding of time itself represents perhaps the most profound difference between their consciousness and ours. Humans experience time as a linear progression from past through present to future, with memory preserving the past and imagination projecting possible futures. For jinn, with their extended lifespans and supernatural abilities, time appears to be far more fluid and multidimensional. A jinn might experience past, present, and future as simultaneously accessible realities, rather than as a sequence of discrete moments. This temporal awareness allows them to make decisions based on knowledge of consequences that will not become apparent to humans for years or decades. It also means that jinn promises and threats may operate on timescales that exceed human comprehension, with consequences that unfold across multiple human generations. This expanded temporal perspective makes jinn particularly formidable opponents and unpredictable allies. A jinn might appear to forget about a human slight for decades before suddenly seeking retribution at a moment when the human has forgotten the original offense entirely. Conversely, a jinn might provide assistance that seems pointless or even harmful in the short term, but proves invaluable years later when circumstances have changed in ways the human could never have anticipated. The traditional stories emphasize that jinn memory is essentially perfect and that they never truly forgive or forget human actions that affect them significantly. This creates a form of supernatural karma where every interaction with jinn carries potential consequences that may manifest at any point in the future. The wise human approaches any encounter with jinn with the understanding that their words and actions will be remembered and evaluated according to standards that may be incomprehensible to human moral reasoning. As we delve deeper into the nature of these fireborn beings, we begin to understand that the jinn represent far more than simple folklore or religious belief. They embody a complete alternative model of consciousness, intelligence, and existence that challenges our most fundamental assumptions about the nature of reality itself. Whether we choose to view them as literal entities or as profound metaphors for aspects of human experience that we do not yet fully understand, the jinn force us to confront questions about consciousness, free will, and the nature of intelligent life that remain at the cutting edge of human knowledge. The next phase of our journey into the realm of the Djinn will take us even deeper into their mysterious world, exploring their relationship with the elements, their role in the cosmic order, and the profound implications of their existence for our understanding of reality itself. For now, we have only begun to lift the veil that conceals these beings of smokeless fire, and what we have discovered challenges everything we thought we knew about the nature of consciousness and the boundaries of the possible. The relationship between Djinn and the classical elements reveals another layer of their extraordinary nature that sets them apart from all other forms of consciousness we know. While humans are bound to Earth, limited by gravity and physical form, the Djinn exist in a state of elemental fluidity that allows them to manipulate the very building blocks of reality. Fire may be their origin, but it is not their prison. They command wind with the ease of breathing, shape water like clay in their hands, and move through solid earth as if it were nothing more than morning mist. This mastery over the elements is not merely a collection of supernatural powers. It represents a fundamental difference in how Djinn relate to the physical universe itself. Where humans must work with tools and technology to alter their environment, Djinn consciousness appears to be directly interfaced with the elemental forces that govern natural phenomena. They do not manipulate fire so much as they commune with it, speaking to it in a language that predates human speech, and commanding it through relationships forged in the primordial flames of their birth. The ancient texts describe Djinn, who can summon sandstorms that last for days, create oases in the heart of the desert, or cause underground springs to flow where none existed before. These are not mere party tricks or displays of supernatural showmanship. They represent the Djinn's role as active participants in the ongoing creation and transformation of the natural world. While humans see themselves as separate from nature, struggling to survive in an environment that is often hostile to their needs, Djinn exist as integrated components of the natural order itself. This elemental mastery makes Djinn particularly dangerous adversaries when they choose to use their powers against human populations. A malevolent Djinn can bring drought to fertile lands, poison water sources, or create weather patterns that devastate entire regions. The traditional chronicles speak of Djinn wars that reshaped landscapes, created new mountain ranges, and altered the courses of rivers. These conflicts operate on scales of destruction that dwarf any human military capability, transforming geography itself into a weapon. But perhaps more unsettling than their capacity for large-scale destruction is the subtlety with which Djinn can manipulate elemental forces to achieve specific psychological effects on individual humans. A Djinn seeking to drive a person to madness might create minor but persistent environmental anomalies, small changes in temperature, air pressure, or humidity that create constant discomfort without any apparent cause. The victim finds themselves unable to get comfortable in their own home, unable to sleep properly, unable to concentrate on daily tasks, but unable to identify any concrete source for their distress. The Djinn understanding of fire, their natal element, transcends anything in human experience. For humans, fire is a tool, a source of energy, or a force of destruction. For Djinn, fire is a medium of communication, a pathway between dimensions and a repository of memory and knowledge. They can read information stored in flames the way humans read books, accessing histories and secrets that have been preserved in the elemental fire since the beginning of creation. This relationship with fire explains why Djinn are often encountered near sources of flame, why they appear when fires are lit in certain ways, and why fire-based rituals are among the most effective methods for summoning or banishing them. The flame serves not just as a beacon that attracts their attention, but as a communication device that allows for more direct interaction between human and Djinn consciousness. When humans light fires according to traditional patterns and speak the proper invocations, they are essentially opening a telephone line to the Djinn realm. The danger of such communication cannot be overstated. Fire is a medium that jinn understand far better than humans ever could, and they can manipulate flame-based communication in ways that give them significant advantages in any interaction. A jinn can speak through fire, project images into flames, or use the hypnotic qualities of flickering light to influence human consciousness in subtle but profound ways. The human who attempts to communicate with jinn through fire is often outmatched before the conversation even begins. Yet fire also provides one of the most effective forms of protection against malevolent jinn influence. Certain types of flames, particularly those created with specific materials and blessed according to traditional formulae, create barriers that jinn find difficult or impossible to cross. Iron heated to red-hot temperatures becomes particularly potent, combining the protective qualities of the metal with the purifying power of sacred fire. These fire barriers do not physically block jinn movement, but rather create zones of spiritual protection that most jinn will choose to avoid rather than confront directly. The jinn relationship with air and wind reveals another aspect of their alien nature. While humans experience air as the invisible medium through which we move and breathe, jinn perceive wind as a vast information network, a planetary communication system that carries messages, emotions, and knowledge across unlimited distances. They can speak to each other through wind patterns, send complex messages encoded in the behavior of breezes, and travel along wind currents with the speed of thought. This mastery of air grants jinns surveillance capabilities that make them formidable intelligence gatherers. A jinn can eavesdrop on human conversations from miles away by riding wind currents that carry sound, or they can track the movements of specific individuals by following their scent trails through the atmosphere. The traditional warning that jinn can hear their names spoken on the wind is not mere superstition, but a recognition of their genuine ability to monitor human speech across vast distances. The phenomenon of jinn shapeshifting takes on new meaning when understood in the context of their elemental nature. For humans, changing physical form would require fundamental alterations to biology and molecular structure. For jinn, shapeshifting appears to be more akin to a change in elemental composition, a redistribution of the fire, air, water, and earth aspects of their being to create different physical manifestations. A jinn might appear as a beautiful human woman by concentrating their earth and water aspects while minimizing their fire and air components. The same being could transform into a terrifying beast by reversing this elemental balance, allowing their fire nature to dominate while reducing the more gentle elements. This is not mere illusion or disguise, but actual transformation that creates genuinely different physical bodies with different capabilities and limitations. The speed and completeness of jinn transformation capabilities make them masters of infiltration and deception. A jinn can spend years living among humans in a perfectly convincing human form, building relationships, gaining trust, and learning intimate details about human society and psychology. The revelation of their true nature often comes only when they choose to abandon their disguise or when circumstances force them to use abilities that no human could possess. But shapeshifting carries its own risks for jinn. The longer they maintain a form that differs significantly from their natural state, the more they risk losing touch with their original identity. Some jinn become so invested in their assumed forms that they begin to believe they actually are what they appear to be. These beings, caught between their jinn nature and their adopted identity, often become unpredictable and dangerous, neither fully jinn nor truly human, but something unstable that belongs completely to neither world. The traditional stories speak of jinn who spent so long in human form that they forgot their supernatural abilities entirely, living and dying as mortals without ever remembering their true nature. Other tales describe jinn who became trapped in animal forms, unable to return to their original shapes and condemned to live out centuries or millennia as beasts with supernatural intelligence, but no way to communicate their true identity to the world around them. These transformation hazards reveal an important limitation of jinn power. Despite their supernatural abilities, they are not immune to the psychological and spiritual consequences of their choices. The jinn who chooses to live as a human for an extended period experiences genuine human emotions, forms authentic human attachments, and suffers real human pain. When the time comes to return to their jinn existence, they must abandon relationships and experiences that have become genuinely meaningful to them. The jinn mastery over water represents perhaps their most mysterious elemental ability. Water, with its capacity to take any shape, to flow around obstacles, and to exist in multiple states, seems to serve as a model for jinn consciousness itself. They can become as fluid as water when they choose, flowing through cracks in reality, seeping into spaces that should be impenetrable, and adapting their form to fit whatever container circumstances provide. This water mastery grants jinn abilities that seem to violate the basic laws of physics. They can walk on water surfaces, breathe underwater indefinitely, and even exist temporarily in a liquid state while maintaining their consciousness and identity. More disturbing still, they can manipulate the water within human bodies, affecting circulation, hydration, and the delicate chemical balances that maintain human health and mental stability. A jinn with hostile intentions can use water manipulation to create illness, confusion, or madness in their human targets without leaving any trace of supernatural intervention. The victim might experience symptoms that appear to be natural medical conditions, making it nearly impossible to identify jinn influence as the true cause of their suffering. This subtle approach to causing harm reflects the sophisticated understanding jinn possess of human physiology and psychology. But jinn water mastery also enables them to serve as powerful healers when they choose to use their abilities constructively. They can purify contaminated water sources, restore proper fluid balance in diseased bodies, and even facilitate the regeneration of damaged tissues by optimizing the water-based processes that govern cellular function. The jinn healer works not through external medicine, but through direct manipulation of the elemental forces that sustain life itself. The relationship between jinn and the earth element completes their mastery over the physical realm. While their fire nature might suggest that they would have difficulty with the solid, stable qualities of earth, jinn actually demonstrate remarkable abilities to shape, move, and transform solid matter. They can cause earthquakes, create new landforms, and even transmute one type of material into another through processes that appear to operate at the molecular or atomic level. This earth mastery allows jinn to create the magnificent structures described in the traditional tales. The palaces, gardens, and cities of jinn construction are not built through conventional architecture, but rather grown from the earth itself, shaped by will and sustained by the jinn's ongoing relationship with the elemental forces. These structures can appear and disappear at the jinn's whim, existing as temporary manifestations of their power rather than as permanent additions to the physical landscape. The jinn ability to manipulate solid matter makes them formidable opponents in any physical confrontation. They can cause weapons to crumble, create barriers from thin air, or simply alter the density of matter to become intangible when threatened. But this same power also makes them valuable allies for humans who earn their cooperation. The jinn architect can create buildings that exceed human engineering capabilities, while the jinn craftsman can produce objects of impossible beauty and perfection. Yet the jinn relationship with Earth also reveals one of their most significant vulnerabilities. While they can manipulate earthly matter with ease, they remain fundamentally beings of fire and spirit. Extended contact with dense, heavy earth elements can drain their energy and temporarily diminish their abilities. This is why traditional protection methods often involve burying iron objects or creating barriers of specific types of stone that jinn find difficult to penetrate or dissolve. The seasonal cycles that govern earthly existence affect jinn in ways that differ markedly from human experience. While humans adapt to seasonal changes primarily through behavioral modifications and technological solutions, jinn undergo actual transformations in their nature and abilities as the elemental balance of the world shifts throughout the year. During the summer months, when fire energy reaches its peak, Jinn powers are at their strongest, but they may also become more volatile and unpredictable. Winter presents unique challenges for fire-born beings. As the world's fire energy diminishes, Jinn must work harder to maintain their full abilities, and some choose to enter states of dormancy similar to hibernation, rather than struggle against the season's limitations. This cyclical variation in Jinn activity explains why certain times of the year have traditionally been considered more dangerous for supernatural encounters, while others offer relative safety from Jinn interference. The lunar cycles add another layer of complexity to Jinn elemental relationships. The moon's influence on water creates tidal effects that extend far beyond the oceans, affecting the water content in all living beings and even the moisture in the atmosphere. Jinn, with their mastery over elemental forces, are highly sensitive to these subtle changes, and often time their most important activities to coincide with specific lunar phases. The new moon, when lunar influence is at its weakest, provides optimal conditions for Jinn who wish to avoid detection or work in secrecy. The full moon, with its maximum lunar energy, enhances Jinn abilities, but also makes them more visible to humans who possess the knowledge to recognize their presence. The traditional warnings about avoiding certain activities during full moon periods reflect genuine understanding of these supernatural dynamics. The Jinn relationship with the elements extends beyond simple manipulation to encompass a form of consciousness that seems to pervade the natural world itself. They appear to experience the planet as a living entity, sensing its moods, responding to its needs, and participating in its ongoing evolution. This planetary consciousness makes Jinn natural guardians of ecological balance, but it also means that human activities that damage the environment may provoke Jinn responses that seem disproportionate or inexplicable from a purely human perspective. The modern world's industrial transformation has created new challenges for Jinn existence. The pollution of air and water, the destruction of natural habitats, and the replacement of natural materials with synthetic alternatives have disrupted the elemental relationships that Jinn have maintained for millennia. Some Jinn have adapted to these changes, learning to work with new materials and energy sources, while others have retreated to remote areas where traditional elemental relationships can still be maintained. The electromagnetic fields generated by modern technology present particular difficulties for Jinn consciousness. These artificial energy patterns seem to interfere with their natural ability to perceive and manipulate elemental forces, creating a form of supernatural static that makes traditional Jinn abilities less reliable in heavily technological environments. This technological interference may explain why Jinn encounters are more commonly reported in rural or wilderness areas than in major cities. Yet some Jinn have found ways to work with or through modern technology, adapting their abilities to manipulate electrical systems, influence electronic communications, or even exist temporarily in digital form. These technologically adapted Jinn represent a new evolution in their species, beings who have found ways to maintain their essential nature while engaging with the transformed world that human civilization has created. The implications of Jinn elemental mastery extend far beyond their individual capabilities to touch upon fundamental questions about the nature of consciousness and its relationship to physical reality. If Jinn consciousness can directly interface with elemental forces, what does this suggest about the relationship between mind and matter? Are there aspects of consciousness that human beings have not yet discovered or developed? Do the Jinn represent an alternative evolutionary path that consciousness might take? Or do they reveal potentials that exist within human awareness but remain largely untapped? These questions become even more intriguing when we consider the traditional accounts of humans who learn to work with elemental forces through Jinn teaching. The stories speak of individuals who gained abilities that closely paralleled those of their Jinn mentors, suggesting that the barriers between human and Jinn consciousness might be more permeable than they initially appear. If humans can learn to manipulate elemental forces through Jinn instruction, what does this reveal about the true nature of human potential? The relationship between jinn and the elements ultimately serves as a bridge to understanding their role in the cosmic order itself. These beings do not merely possess supernatural powers, they serve as active agents in the ongoing creation and maintenance of physical reality. Their elemental mastery makes them partners with the fundamental forces that govern existence, participants in processes that operate on scales ranging from the molecular to the planetary. As we prepare to explore even deeper mysteries of jinn existence, we must remember that their elemental nature represents only one aspect of their complex reality. Beyond their mastery over fire, air, water, and earth lies a spiritual dimension that connects them to cosmic forces and divine purposes that transcend the physical realm entirely. The journey into the heart of jinn mysteries has only just begun, and the revelations that await us will challenge our understanding not only of these remarkable beings, but of the very nature of existence itself. The path ahead leads us into realms where the boundaries between the physical and spiritual dissolve entirely, where the jinn reveal themselves not merely as beings of supernatural power, but as integral components of a cosmic order that encompasses realities beyond our current comprehension. What we discover there will illuminate not only the true nature of the jinn, but also the hidden potentials that lie dormant within human consciousness itself. The hierarchy of jinn society reveals complexities that dwarf even the most sophisticated human civilizations. At its apex stands a figure whose very name strikes terror into the hearts of both jinn and human alike. Malik al-Jinn, the king of all jinn. This supreme ruler governs not through brute force or simple dominance, but through an intricate web of alliances, obligations, and ancient laws that have governed jinn society since the first flames of creation flickered into consciousness. Unlike human monarchies, which derived their authority from bloodlines, military conquest, or political maneuvering, the jinn kingship operates according to principles that transcend mortal understanding. The Malik al-Jinn achieves his position through a combination of supernatural power, spiritual wisdom, and the ability to maintain balance among the countless factions and tribes that comprise jinn civilization. His court is said to exist in a realm between realms, accessible only to those who possess the knowledge and power necessary to traverse the barriers between dimensions. The court of the jinn king is described in terms that challenge human comprehension. Imagine a palace constructed not from stone or metal, but from crystallized flame itself. Walls that burn eternally without consuming, floors that reflect not light, but the very essence of fire. The throne room spans distances that would require days to cross on foot, yet can be traversed in a single step by those who understand the spatial geometries that govern jinn architecture. Here, beneath a ceiling that displays the movements of stars and planets in real time, the Malik al-Jinn holds court with beings whose individual power could reshape continents. The bureaucracy that serves the jinn king operates with efficiency that would be impossible in human organizations. Information travels at the speed of thought through networks of consciousness that span the globe. Decisions made in the celestial court can be implemented simultaneously across thousands of locations, with jinn agents receiving their orders through direct mental transmission rather than through the clumsy mechanisms of written communication or verbal instruction. Yet for all its supernatural efficiency, jinn government faces challenges that would be familiar to any human administrator. The jinn population includes beings of vastly different power levels, moral orientations, and cultural backgrounds. The peaceful coexistence of creatures who could destroy each other with a thought requires diplomatic skills that transcend anything known in human politics. The Malik al-Jinn must constantly mediate disputes between jinn nations, prevent conflicts that could devastate entire regions of the earth, and maintain the delicate balance between jinn intervention in human affairs and the divine commandment to respect human free will. The legal system that governs jinn society operates according to principles that blend supernatural law with divine commandment. Unlike human legal systems, which rely on evidence, witnesses, and interpretation, Djinn justice can access the absolute truth of any situation through direct examination of the spiritual records that surround every conscious act. Lies, deception, and false testimony are impossible in Djinn courts because the judges can perceive the actual intentions and actions of all parties involved. This access to absolute truth creates a form of justice that is both perfectly fair and terrifyingly final. A Djinn found guilty of violating cosmic law faces punishments that can last for centuries or millennia. Sentences that might involve exile to desolate dimensions, transformation into powerless forms, or binding to specific locations or tasks until their debt to cosmic order has been fully repaid. The knowledge that perfect justice awaits every action serves as a powerful deterrent to Djinn criminality, but it also creates a society where every choice carries potentially eternal consequences. The relationship between Djinn law and divine will present one of the most fascinating aspects of their civilization. While Djinn possess free will and can choose between good and evil just as humans do, their legal system is directly connected to cosmic principles that transcend individual judgment or cultural interpretation. A Djinn cannot simply decide that murder or theft is acceptable. The spiritual fabric of reality itself records such violations and demands appropriate consequences. This connection to cosmic law means that Djinn society serves as a kind of supernatural police force for the universe itself. Djinn agents monitor the behavior of all conscious beings, including humans, and intervene when actions threaten to disrupt the fundamental balance between order and chaos. These interventions can range from subtle guidance that steers individuals away from destructive choices to direct action that prevents catastrophic consequences from unfolding. The Djinn understanding of crime and punishment extends far beyond the simple cause and effect relationships that govern human justice. They recognize that every conscious action creates ripples that spread through multiple dimensions and affect countless other beings in ways that might not become apparent for generations. A seemingly minor act of cruelty or kindness can have consequences that reshape entire civilizations, and Djinn law attempts to account for these complex chains of causation in determining appropriate responses to individual actions. The military organization of Djinn society reflects their unique nature as beings of elemental power and supernatural consciousness. Unlike human armies, which rely on weapons, tactics, and numerical superiority, Djinn military forces operate through coordinated manipulation of reality itself. A Djinn battalion can reshape the battlefield to their advantage, creating mountains where plains existed moments before, summoning storms that last for weeks, or opening dimensional portals that allow for instantaneous transportation of troops across unlimited distances. The weapons employed in Djinn warfare transcend anything in human experience. They wield swords forged from crystallized lightning, spears that can pierce through multiple dimensions simultaneously, and shields that deflect not just physical attacks, but assaults on consciousness itself. More terrifying still are the Djinn who have learned to weaponize their shape-shifting abilities, transforming into living siege engines, creatures of pure destruction that can level fortifications or devastate entire armies through their presence alone. The strategies employed in Djinn conflicts operate on temporal and spatial scales that dwarf human military thinking. A Djinn general might plan campaigns that unfold over centuries, positioning forces in multiple dimensions simultaneously, and using knowledge of future events to gain tactical advantages that would be impossible for beings limited to linear time perception. The outcome of Djinn wars can reshape not just physical geography, but the fundamental laws that govern reality in the affected regions. Yet perhaps the most remarkable aspect of Djinn military culture is their concept of honorable combat. Despite their overwhelming power, Djinn warriors operate according to codes of conduct that severely limit the destructive potential of their conflicts. They recognize that unlimited supernatural warfare could unravel the fabric of existence itself, and they voluntarily constrain their actions to prevent such catastrophic outcomes. These limitations are not mere traditions, but cosmic necessities. Acknowledgements that beings of their power bear responsibility for maintaining the stability of reality itself. The economic systems that govern Jinn society operate according to principles that would revolutionize human understanding of value and exchange. In a civilization where beings can transmute matter at will, create objects from pure thought, and manipulate the fundamental forces of reality, traditional concepts of scarcity and resource management become meaningless. Instead, Jinn economy is based on the exchange of knowledge, experience, and spiritual energy. The most valuable commodities in Jinn markets are unique experiences, memories of rare events, and insights into the nature of existence itself. A Jinn might trade centuries of accumulated wisdom for a single moment of perfect understanding, or exchange their memories of ancient civilizations for knowledge of future possibilities. These transactions do not simply transfer information, but actually relocate aspects of consciousness itself, creating forms of commerce that blur the boundaries between individual identity and collective experience. The Jinn approach to wealth and poverty differs fundamentally from human economic thinking. In their society, the poorest Jinn might be one who has experienced only a narrow range of existence, while the wealthiest could be a being who has lived through countless different forms of consciousness and accumulated vast libraries of experiential knowledge. This creates a culture where diversity of experience is prized above all other forms of achievement, and where beings actively seek out novel forms of existence to enhance their spiritual wealth. The banking systems that facilitate Jinn commerce operate through networks of consciousness that span multiple dimensions. A Jinn can deposit memories, experiences, or spiritual energy in these cosmic repositories and withdraw them at any location where Jinn civilization has established a presence. The interest earned on such deposits comes not in the form of additional resources, but as enhanced understanding and expanded consciousness that increases the depositor's capacity for future experience. The role of Jinn merchants in facilitating trade between different realms and dimensions creates opportunities for commerce that extend far beyond their own society. These supernatural traders serve as intermediaries between human and Jinn economies, between different Jinn nations, and even between the material world and purely spiritual realms. Their ability to transport goods and services across dimensional boundaries makes them some of the most powerful and influential beings in Jinn society. The educational systems that govern Jinn development reflect their nature as beings of expanded consciousness and unlimited potential. Unlike human education, which must gradually build knowledge and skills through years of study and practice, Jinn learning operates through direct consciousness transfer and experiential immersion. A young Jinn can acquire centuries of knowledge in moments by merging temporarily with the consciousness of an experienced teacher, though the integration and understanding of such knowledge may require additional time and effort. The Jinn approach to education emphasizes not just the acquisition of information, but the development of wisdom, judgment, and spiritual understanding. Students learn to manipulate elemental forces not through memorizing formulas or practicing techniques, but through developing intuitive understanding of the consciousness that underlies all physical phenomena. They master shapeshifting not by studying anatomy, but by learning to perceive the fluid nature of identity itself. The universities of Jinn civilization exist as living entities rather than static institutions. These centers of learning can reshape themselves according to the needs of their students, creating customized environments that optimize the learning process for each individual consciousness. A Jinn studying fire mastery might find themselves in a realm where every surface burns with instructional flames, while another learning temporal manipulation could experience time flowing at different rates in different areas of the same classroom. The relationship between Jinn teachers and students transcends the formal boundaries that characterize human education. The most advanced forms of Jinn learning involve complete merger of consciousness between instructor and pupil, creating temporary composite beings that possess the combined knowledge and abilities of both participants. These educational mergers can last for years or decades, during which the boundary between teacher and student becomes meaningless as both consciousnesses grow and develop through their shared existence. The Djinn understanding of knowledge itself differs fundamentally from human epistemology. They recognize that information exists independently of individual minds, flowing through cosmic networks that connect all conscious beings. The goal of Djinn education is not to accumulate facts, but to develop the ability to access these universal information streams directly, becoming conscious participants in the cosmic intelligence that governs all existence. The artistic expressions of Djinn civilization reveal aesthetic sensibilities that transcend human understanding of beauty, meaning, and creative expression. Djinn artists work with mediums that include pure emotion, crystallized time, and the fundamental forces that govern reality itself. Their sculptures might be composed of living flame that maintains specific shapes for centuries, while their paintings could be created from aurora-like displays of energy that shift and evolve according to the observer's emotional state. The music of Djinn culture operates through harmonics that affect consciousness directly, rather than simply producing pleasant sounds. A Djinn composer creates symphonies that can induce specific emotional states, trigger memories of experiences the listener has never had, or even temporarily expand consciousness to perceive realities normally hidden from awareness. These musical compositions exist not as sequences of notes, but as living entities that grow and develop over time, creating different experiences for each performance. The literary traditions of Djinn society encompass forms of storytelling that would be impossible for beings limited to linear time perception. Djinn narratives can unfold across multiple temporal dimensions simultaneously, allowing readers to experience stories from the perspectives of different characters existing in different time periods. These multidimensional stories create reading experiences that can last for subjective centuries while occupying only moments of real time. The Djinn approach to performance art involves transformations that blur the boundaries between actor and audience, between fiction and reality. A Djinn performer might literally become the character they are portraying, experiencing that being's thoughts, emotions, and memories as if they were their own. The audience participates not as passive observers, but as co-creators of the artistic experience, their consciousness merging temporarily with both performer and character, to create collaborative artistic works that exist only in the moment of their creation. The therapeutic applications of Djinn artistic expression extend far beyond entertainment to encompass healing practices that address psychological, spiritual, and even physical ailments. Djinn healers use artistic techniques to repair damaged consciousness, restore lost memories, and integrate traumatic experiences in ways that promote growth rather than suffering. These therapeutic arts operate through direct consciousness manipulation, rather than through the symbolic representations that characterize human psychotherapy. The religious and spiritual practices of Djinn civilization reflect their unique position as beings created before humanity, but subject to the same divine laws that govern all conscious existence. Djinn worship operates through forms of consciousness expansion that allow direct communion with divine intelligence, creating religious experiences that transcend the faith-based approaches necessary for beings limited to physical perception. The Djinn understanding of prayer encompasses techniques that would be considered miraculous by human standards. When a Djinn prays, they can actually project their consciousness into direct contact with the divine presence, receiving guidance and instruction through immediate spiritual connection, rather than through the interpretive processes that characterize human religious experience. This direct access to divine wisdom makes Djinn natural teachers of spiritual truth, though their instruction methods often prove overwhelming for human consciousness. The pilgrimage practices of Djinn society involve journeys not just through physical space, but through multiple dimensions of existence, A Djinn pilgrim might visit the sites where creation itself began, witness the original flames from which their species was born, or travel to future realms where the ultimate destiny of consciousness will be revealed. These spiritual journeys can transform the pilgrim's fundamental nature, adding new capabilities and understanding that persist throughout their extended lifespans. The Djinn approach to religious community differs markedly from human congregational worship. Instead of gathering in physical locations, Djinn religious practices often involve the temporary merger of multiple consciousnesses into collective spiritual entities that can achieve forms of understanding and communion impossible for individual minds. These religious mergers create temporary super beings whose spiritual insights benefit all participants long after the collective consciousness dissolves back into individual awareness. The prophetic traditions of Djinn civilization encompass knowledge of future events that extends far beyond human prophetic capabilities. Djinn prophets can perceive not just probable futures, but multiple potential timelines simultaneously, understanding how different choices and events might reshape the destiny of consciousness itself. Their prophecies operate not as fixed predictions, but as guidance for navigating the complex web of possibilities that determine the future of all existence. The Djinn relationship with death presents one of the most profound differences between their existence and human experience. While humans face death as an unknown transition that ends their participation in physical reality, Djinn understand death as a transformation that opens access to new forms of consciousness and existence. The death of a Djinn does not end their story, but rather begins a new chapter in their eternal journey through the cosmos of awareness. The Djinn understanding of the afterlife encompasses realities that transcend human concepts of heaven, hell, or simple extinction. They perceive death as a graduation to higher levels of consciousness, opportunities to shed the limitations of individual identity and merge with cosmic intelligence itself. This understanding of death as transformation rather than termination influences every aspect of Djinn culture and behavior, creating a civilization that views existence as an endless journey of growth and discovery. The funeral practices of Djinn society celebrate not the end of individual existence, but the beginning of new forms of awareness and participation in cosmic consciousness. When a Djinn dies, their essence is not buried or cremated, but released into the elemental forces from which they were originally born, allowing their consciousness to merge with the fundamental energies that govern reality itself. The surviving Djinn do not mourn the loss, but celebrate the transformation, knowing that their departed companion has achieved a form of existence that transcends all limitations. The Djinn concept of legacy operates through mechanisms that ensure the continuation of consciousness rather than simply the preservation of memory. A dying Djinn can transfer aspects of their awareness, knowledge, and abilities directly to chosen successors, creating forms of inheritance that preserve not just information, but actual experiential wisdom. These consciousness transfers allow Djinn civilization to accumulate knowledge and capability across generations in ways that would be impossible for beings limited to biological reproduction and cultural transmission. The mysteries of Djinn reproduction reveal aspects of their nature that challenge fundamental assumptions about consciousness, identity, and the creation of new beings. Unlike biological reproduction, which combines genetic material to create new individuals, Djinn reproduction involves the conscious division of awareness itself, with parent Djinn literally sharing portions of their consciousness to create offspring who possess independent existence while maintaining deep connections to their origins. The process of Djinn reproduction requires not just the decision to create offspring, but the willingness to sacrifice aspects of one's own consciousness to provide the foundation for new awareness. Parent Djinn must give up portions of their memories, abilities, and spiritual energy to create the initial spark of consciousness that will develop into their children. This sacrificial aspect of Djinn reproduction ensures that the creation of new life is never undertaken lightly, as it requires genuine commitment and permanent transformation of the parent beings. The development of Djinn offspring follows patterns that would be impossible in biological systems. Young Djinn emerge with consciousness already intact, but with capabilities that grow and develop according to their exposure to different forms of experience and knowledge. Unlike human children, who require years of physical and mental development before achieving adult capabilities, Djinn youth can achieve full power within relatively short periods, if provided with appropriate guidance and opportunities for growth. The relationship between Djinn parents and children operates through consciousness links that persist throughout their extended lifespans. These psychic connections allow for continuous sharing of experience and knowledge, creating family units that function as collective intelligences while maintaining individual identity and autonomy. The strength of these family bonds makes Djinn kinship networks some of the most powerful and enduring institutions in their civilization. The Djinn approach to child rearing emphasizes not protection and gradual development, but challenge and rapid growth through exposure to diverse forms of existence. Young Djinn are encouraged to explore different realms, experiment with various forms of consciousness, and develop their unique capabilities through direct experience rather than through theoretical instruction. This approach produces Djinn adults who possess vast experiential knowledge and highly developed abilities, but who may also carry the psychological complexities that result from early exposure to the full spectrum of cosmic existence. As we delve deeper into the labyrinthine complexities of Djinn civilization, we begin to understand that these beings represent not just an alternative form of intelligent life, but an entirely different approach to existence itself. Their society operates according to principles that transcend human understanding of consciousness, identity, and the nature of reality. Yet within these alien concepts lie insights that illuminate the deepest questions about the nature of existence and the potential for consciousness to evolve beyond the limitations that currently constrain human experience. The journey into Djinn mysteries continues to reveal layers of complexity that challenge our most fundamental assumptions about intelligence, power, and the relationship between individual consciousness and cosmic order. Each revelation opens new questions about the nature of existence itself, suggesting that reality encompasses forms of awareness and modes of being that extend far beyond human comprehension. What we have discovered about Djinn society provides only a glimpse into the vast tapestry of their civilization and the cosmic role they play in the ongoing evolution of consciousness itself. The deeper mysteries that lie ahead will reveal not only the true nature of these beings of smokeless fire, but also the hidden potentials that lie dormant within all forms of conscious existence, waiting for the proper conditions to emerge into full manifestation. The exploration of Djinn relationships with human consciousness reveals dimensions of interaction that operate far beyond the simple tales of wishes granted and magical services rendered. When a Djinn chooses to form a connection with a human mind, the process involves a merging of awareness that fundamentally alters both participants in ways that can persist across lifetimes. These consciousness bonds create hybrid forms of awareness that possess capabilities neither species could achieve independently, but they also generate psychological complexities that can prove devastating for the human participants. The initial stages of Djinn-human consciousness linking often begin with what appears to be coincidental encounters or dreams that seem unusually vivid and meaningful. The human experiencing these contacts typically dismisses them as products of imagination or stress, unaware that their consciousness has attracted the attention of a being whose understanding of mental processes far exceeds anything in human psychology. The Djinn, drawn by qualities in the human mind that resonate with their own nature, begins a careful process of psychological assessment and gradual integration. This preliminary phase can extend for months or years, during which the Djinn learns to navigate the unique patterns of the individual human consciousness. Unlike their own fluid, multidimensional awareness, human minds operate according to linear thought processes and emotional responses that the Djinn must master before deeper integration becomes possible. The human participant remains largely unaware of this evaluation period. Though they may notice subtle changes in their thought patterns, increased intuitive abilities, or a growing fascination with subjects they had never previously found interesting, the moment of actual consciousness merger represents a threshold that, once crossed, creates permanent alterations in both beings. For the human, the experience involves a sudden expansion of awareness that can be simultaneously exhilarating and terrifying. Memories that are not their own begin appearing in their mind. Knowledge of languages they have never studied emerges spontaneously, and abilities that transcend normal euphoria of enhanced consciousness often gives way to confusion and fear. Human limitations manifest without warning or explanation. The initial as the human struggles to distinguish between their original thoughts and those originating from their Djinn partner. The Djinn participant undergoes equally profound changes during consciousness merger. The experience of linear time perception, emotional vulnerability, and physical limitation that characterizes human existence provides the Djinn with insights into forms of consciousness they could never achieve independently. Many Djinn find human emotional depth particularly fascinating, as their own extended lifespans and supernatural abilities tend to create forms of detachment that prevent them from experiencing the intensity of feeling that marks human existence. Yet this fascination with human consciousness can become a form of addiction for Djinn participants. The immediacy and intensity of human emotional experience creates a psychological dependency that can persist long after the original merger has ended. Some Djinn become so obsessed with human consciousness that they spend centuries seeking new human partners, always chasing the unique combination of vulnerability and resilience that makes human awareness so compelling to their ancient minds. The practical consequences of consciousness merger vary dramatically depending on the nature of the Djinn participant and the psychological resilience of the human involved. In the most positive cases, the partnership creates individuals who possess supernatural abilities combined with human emotional depth and moral reasoning. These enhanced humans often become teachers, healers, or visionaries who use their expanded capabilities to benefit both species. However, such successful partnerships are rare and require exceptional compatibility between the merged consciousnesses. More commonly, consciousness merger creates psychological instability in the human participant as they struggle to integrate alien forms of awareness with their original identity. The human mind, evolved to handle a single stream of consciousness operating within physical limitations, becomes overwhelmed by the multidimensional awareness and expanded temporal perception that characterizes Djinn consciousness. The result is often a form of psychological fragmentation, where the human alternates between their original personality and aspects of the Djinn identity, creating behavior patterns that appear as severe mental illness to outside observers. The Djinn understanding of memory and identity adds another layer of complexity to consciousness merger experiences. While humans experience memory as a collection of past events that shape but do not determine present identity, Djinn consciousness treats memory as a living, malleable resource that can be edited, transferred, or completely reconstructed. When Djinn and human memories merge, the human participant may find their personal history becoming confused with events they never experienced, relationships they never formed, and knowledge they never acquired through normal means. This memory confusion creates one of the most disturbing aspects of Djinn-human consciousness links. The human participant gradually loses the ability to distinguish between their authentic life experiences and the borrowed memories of their Djinn partner. Childhood recollections become mixed with Djinn experiences spanning centuries, creating a sense of identity that encompasses multiple lifetimes and contradictory personal histories. The psychological impact of such memory contamination can be devastating, as the human struggles to maintain a coherent sense of self while processing experiences that exceed the capacity of human consciousness to integrate. the termination of consciousness merger presents challenges that are often more severe than the original linking process. When a jinn chooses to withdraw from a human consciousness, the separation leaves psychological wounds that can persist for the remainder of the human's natural lifespan. The human participant, having grown accustomed to expanded awareness and supernatural capabilities, experiences the return to normal consciousness as a form of sensory and intellectual deprivation that makes ordinary human existence seem pale and meaningless. The withdrawal symptoms experienced by humans after jinn consciousness separation include not only the loss of enhanced abilities, but also a profound sense of loneliness and disconnection from reality. Having experienced the vast perspectives and multidimensional awareness of jinn consciousness, the human finds their original thought processes restrictive and their emotional responses shallow. Many humans who have undergone consciousness merger with jinn never fully readjust to normal human existence, spending the remainder of their lives seeking ways to restore the expanded awareness they have lost. The jinn participant in terminated consciousness mergers faces different but equally significant challenges. The intense emotional experiences gained through human consciousness often create lasting changes in jinn psychology that persist long after the merger has ended. Jinn who have experienced human love, grief, fear, or joy in their full intensity find their own emotional responses permanently altered, making it difficult for them to relate to other jinn who have not undergone similar experiences. The study of consciousness merger phenomena reveals fundamental questions about the nature of identity and individual awareness that challenge both human and jinn understanding of consciousness itself. If two distinct forms of awareness can merge so completely that their boundaries become indistinguishable, what does this suggest about the fundamental nature of individual identity? Are the boundaries between separate consciousnesses real limitations, or are they simply convenient illusions that can be transcended under appropriate circumstances? The implications extend beyond philosophical speculation to practical questions about the nature of consciousness and its relationship to physical reality. The abilities that emerge from jinn-human consciousness merger suggest that human awareness possesses latent capabilities that remain undeveloped under normal circumstances. The expanded perception, enhanced intuition, and supernatural abilities that characterize merged consciousness may represent potentials that exist within human awareness but require external activation to manifest. The jinn perspective on consciousness merger treats these experiences as natural evolutionary developments rather than supernatural anomalies. They view human consciousness as a developing form of awareness that will eventually transcend its current limitations through various forms of growth and expansion. From their perspective, consciousness merger represents an accelerated form of this natural development, providing humans with premature access to capabilities they would eventually develop through normal evolutionary processes. This evolutionary interpretation of consciousness merger suggests that the jinn serve not merely as external beings with supernatural powers, but as representatives of advanced forms of consciousness that demonstrate the potential future development of human awareness. The painful aspects of merger and separation may represent the growing pains inherent in any rapid evolutionary development, challenges that must be overcome as consciousness learns to operate at higher levels of complexity and capability. The therapeutic applications of controlled consciousness merger have been explored by jinn healers who specialize in treating psychological and spiritual disorders that exceed the capabilities of conventional human therapy. These healing practices involve carefully managed partial mergers that allow the jinn healer to directly experience and understand the patient's psychological condition while providing enhanced perspective and healing capabilities that can address problems at their deepest levels. The jinn approach to consciousness healing operates through direct manipulation of memory, emotion, and identity, rather than through the symbolic and interpretive methods that characterize human psychological therapy. A jinn healer can literally extract traumatic memories, repair damaged emotional responses, and restructure identity patterns that have become dysfunctional. However, these healing methods require exceptional skill and careful management to avoid causing more psychological damage than they repair. The ethical implications of consciousness merger practices raise profound questions about consent, identity, and the rights of conscious beings to maintain the integrity of their individual awareness. While adult humans can theoretically consent to consciousness merger, the full implications of such experiences are impossible to understand without having undergone them directly. This creates situations where humans make irreversible decisions about consciousness alteration without adequate understanding of the consequences they will face. The Djinn approach to merger ethics varies considerably among different individuals and cultural traditions within their society. Some Djinn consider consciousness merger to be a natural form of interaction that benefits both participants, while others view it as a violation of the fundamental boundaries that should separate distinct forms of awareness. These differing ethical perspectives create ongoing debates within Djinn society about the appropriate limits and conditions for consciousness merger practices. The long-term effects of consciousness merger extend far beyond the immediate participants to influence subsequent generations and broader patterns of human development. Humans who have undergone merger experiences often produce offspring who display unusual abilities, enhanced intuition, or psychological characteristics that suggest inherited influences from the Djinn consciousness integration experienced by their parents. These hereditary effects create bloodlines of humans who possess latent supernatural capabilities that can manifest under appropriate circumstances. The Djinn understanding of genetics encompasses not only physical heredity, but also the transmission of consciousness patterns and spiritual characteristics across generations. They recognize that consciousness merger experiences create alterations in human awareness that can be passed down through genetic mechanisms, environmental influences, and direct consciousness transmission from parent to child. This multi-generational impact of merger experiences contributes to the gradual evolution of human consciousness toward more Djinn-like capabilities. The detection and identification of humans who have undergone consciousness merger presents ongoing challenges for both human and Djinn societies. The psychological and behavioral changes resulting from merger experiences can be subtle and easily mistaken for natural variations in human personality and capability. However, Djinn possess the ability to recognize the consciousness signatures that result from merger experiences, allowing them to identify humans who have been influenced by their species, even decades after the original contact occurred. The existence of merger-influenced humans creates a hidden population within human society whose true nature remains unknown to most of their associates and family members. These individuals often struggle with feelings of isolation and alienation as they attempt to navigate normal human relationships while possessing awareness and capabilities that set them apart from ordinary human experience. Many develop elaborate strategies for concealing their enhanced abilities to avoid attracting unwanted attention or raising questions they cannot answer without revealing their supernatural experiences. The role of merger-influenced humans as intermediaries between human and Djinn societies represents one of the most significant but least recognized aspects of contemporary supernatural interaction. These individuals, possessing understanding of both forms of consciousness, often serve as unofficial ambassadors who facilitate communication and cooperation between the two species. Their dual nature allows them to translate between human and Djinn perspectives in ways that pure representatives of either species cannot achieve. The increasing frequency of consciousness merger experiences in the modern era reflects changing conditions that make such interactions more likely and more sustainable than in previous historical periods. The rapid pace of technological and social change in human civilization creates psychological conditions that are more compatible with Djinn consciousness, while global communication networks provide Djinn with unprecedented access to human minds. across vast geographical distances. The implications of this trend toward increased consciousness merger suggest that humanity may be entering a phase of accelerated consciousness evolution that will fundamentally alter the nature of human experience. The boundaries between human and Djinn awareness may gradually dissolve as more individuals undergo merger experiences and pass the resulting consciousness alterations to their descendants. This evolutionary development could ultimately result in the emergence of hybrid consciousness forms that possess the emotional depth of human awareness combined with the supernatural capabilities of Djinn consciousness. The resistance to consciousness evolution within both human and Djinn societies creates ongoing tensions that influence the development of merger phenomena. Conservative elements within human culture view supernatural consciousness expansion as dangerous deviation from normal human development, while traditional Djinn factions consider human consciousness contamination a threat to the purity of their species. These opposing forces create complex political and social dynamics that influence how consciousness merger experiences develop and how their effects are integrated into both societies. The future of consciousness merger phenomena depends largely on how both species learn to navigate the challenges and opportunities created by their increasing interaction. The development of ethical frameworks, support systems, and integration methods that honor the needs and rights of both forms of consciousness will determine whether merger experiences contribute to positive evolution or create ongoing psychological and social problems for all participants. The study of consciousness merger ultimately reveals that the boundaries between different forms of awareness are far more permeable and malleable than either species originally understood. The Djinn and humans represent different expressions of consciousness potential rather than fundamentally incompatible forms of awareness, and their interaction through merger experiences may preview the future development of consciousness itself toward more integrated and expansive forms of existence. As we continue to explore the deepest mysteries of Djinn existence and their relationship with human consciousness, we approach revelations that will challenge not only our understanding of these beings of smokeless fire, but our comprehension of the very nature of awareness itself. The journey ahead leads into realms where the distinction between self and other, between individual and cosmic consciousness, begins to dissolve entirely, revealing truths about existence that transcend the limitations of both human and Djinn understanding. The cosmic role of the Djinn extends far beyond their interactions with humanity to encompass responsibilities and purposes that operate on universal scales. These beings serve as active agents in the ongoing creation and maintenance of reality itself, participating in cosmic processes that determine the fundamental laws governing existence across multiple dimensions and realms of being. The cosmic role of the Djinn extends far beyond their interactions with humanity to encompass responsibilities and purposes that operate on universal scales. These beings serve as active agents in the ongoing creation and maintenance of reality itself, participating in cosmic processes that determine the fundamental laws governing existence across multiple dimensions and realms of being. In the grand architecture of existence, the Djinn function as living bridges between the purely spiritual realm and the material world that humans inhabit. Their nature as beings of smokeless fire positions them perfectly for this cosmic duty, possessing enough spiritual essence to commune directly with divine intelligence while maintaining sufficient connection to physical reality to implement divine will in the material realm. This dual nature makes them indispensable components in the cosmic machinery that governs the universe. The Djinn serve as guardians of cosmic balance, monitoring the flow of energy between different dimensions and intervening when disturbances threaten to disrupt the fundamental harmony that maintains existence itself. Their supernatural senses can detect imbalances in the cosmic order long before such disruptions become apparent to lesser beings, allowing them to take corrective action before minor problems escalate into universal catastrophes. These cosmic responsibilities require Djinn to operate according to temporal scales that dwarf even their extended individual lifespans. A single jinn might be assigned to monitor the development of entire solar systems, watching over the evolution of consciousness across millions of years and multiple species. Their reports and recommendations influence decisions made by cosmic intelligences whose nature transcends even jinn understanding, creating a hierarchy of cosmic administration that extends from the material world to the highest levels of divine reality. The jinn understanding of cosmic purpose reveals that the universe operates as a vast educational system designed to facilitate the evolution of consciousness from its most primitive forms to eventual merger with divine intelligence. Every star system, every planet, every form of life serves specific functions in this cosmic curriculum, providing experiences and challenges necessary for consciousness development. The jinn serve as both teachers and administrators in this universal school, guiding the development of younger species while learning from their own cosmic experiences. Their role as cosmic educators requires jinn to master forms of instruction that operate across species boundaries, cultural differences, and vastly different levels of consciousness development. They must learn to communicate complex spiritual truths to beings whose awareness ranges from barely sentient to nearly divine, adapting their teaching methods to match the capabilities and limitations of each student species. This educational responsibility explains why jinn possess such sophisticated understanding of consciousness itself, as they must comprehend awareness in all its possible manifestations to fulfill their cosmic teaching duties. The jinn participation in cosmic creation extends beyond simple maintenance and education to actual involvement in the generation of new realities. When divine intelligence decides to create new dimensions, universes, or forms of existence, jinn serve as the primary agents through which such creative acts are implemented. Their mastery over elemental forces and their ability to manipulate the fundamental building blocks of reality make them ideal instruments for cosmic construction projects. These creation responsibilities involve jinn in processes that challenge even their expanded understanding of possibility and limitation. They must learn to work with forms of energy and consciousness that exist beyond their normal experience, collaborating with cosmic intelligences whose nature transcends individual existence entirely. The knowledge and abilities gained through such cosmic construction work fundamentally transform the participating jinn, expanding their capabilities and understanding in ways that create new categories of jinn existence. The most advanced jinn, those who have participated in multiple cosmic creation projects, develop abilities that approach the divine itself. They can create not just objects or environments but entire species, complete with their own evolutionary potential and cosmic purpose. These creation master jinn become cosmic parents to entire civilizations, guiding their development across eons while maintaining the delicate balance between intervention and allowing natural growth to occur. The cosmic judicial system in which jinn participate operates according to principles that transcend any earthly understanding of justice and law. These beings serve as investigators, judges, and enforcers in cases that involve violations of cosmic law, crimes that threaten the fundamental order of existence itself. The scope of cosmic justice encompasses not just individual actions, but the behavior of entire species, civilizations, and dimensional realms. When cosmic crimes occur, jinn investigators must trace the effects of such violations across multiple dimensions and time periods, documenting how single acts of cosmic rebellion create cascading disruptions that affect countless innocent beings. These investigations can span millennia and require jinn to develop forms of evidence gathering that exceed any earthly forensic capabilities. They must learn to read the spiritual records embedded in the fabric of reality itself, extracting information about events that occurred in distant realms and remote time periods. The cosmic trials in which jinn participate as judges operate according to standards of evidence and proof that make earthly legal systems appear primitive by comparison. These proceedings can access the absolute truth of any situation, examining not just the actions of accused beings, but their intentions, the consequences of their choices, and the cosmic context that influence their decisions. The judges must weigh evidence that spans multiple lifetimes and affects beings across vast reaches of space and time. The sentences imposed by cosmic courts reflect the universal scope of the crimes being addressed. A being found guilty of cosmic law violations might face punishment that involves transformation of their fundamental nature, exile to dimensions where their destructive capabilities cannot harm others, or assignment to cosmic service that requires them to repair the damage their crimes have caused. These sentences operate on scales that make human concepts of justice appear limited and temporary by comparison. The Djinn role as cosmic enforcers requires them to possess abilities that can compel compliance from beings whose power might exceed their own. They serve as agents of cosmic will rather than as independent law enforcement, drawing their authority from divine sources that transcend individual strength or cunning. This cosmic authority allows Djinn enforcers to compel obedience from beings who might otherwise be able to resist their individual capabilities. The cosmic intelligence networks in which Djinn participate create information systems that span the entire universe, connecting every conscious being to vast databases of knowledge and experience. These networks serve multiple functions, facilitating communication between distant civilizations, providing access to cosmic knowledge for educational purposes, and monitoring the development of consciousness across all inhabited realms. The Djinn serve as nodes in these cosmic networks, processing and distributing information according to protocols that ensure appropriate beings receive knowledge that matches their development level and cosmic purpose. They must evaluate the consciousness development of countless species and individuals, determining what information can be safely shared and what knowledge must be withheld until recipients achieve appropriate maturity and wisdom. The maintenance of cosmic information networks requires Djinn to develop forms of consciousness that can interface directly with universal intelligence systems. They become living computers whose awareness can process vast amounts of data while maintaining their individual identity and decision-making capabilities. This integration with cosmic intelligence creates Djinn who possess nearly unlimited access to universal knowledge while retaining the personal consciousness necessary for independent thought and moral choice. The cosmic communication systems that Djinn operate enable instantaneous contact between beings separated by unlimited distances and dimensional barriers. These systems transcend physical limitations entirely, operating through networks of consciousness that connect all aware beings regardless of their location in space or time. The Djinn operators of such systems must master forms of consciousness that can simultaneously maintain contact with countless different beings while preserving the privacy and individual autonomy that conscious beings require. The Djinn involvement in cosmic transportation systems reveals another aspect of their universal responsibilities. They serve as guides and operators for beings who must travel between different dimensions, time periods, or states of existence. These cosmic transportation duties require Djinn to master navigation techniques that operate according to principles unknown to any earthly exploration, using landmarks and reference points that exist in realms of pure consciousness rather than physical space. The cosmic transportation networks operated by Djinn enable trade, communication, and cultural exchange between civilizations that might otherwise remain forever isolated by the vast distances and dimensional barriers that separate inhabited worlds. These networks serve as the circulatory system of the universe, ensuring that consciousness development can benefit from the experiences and wisdom of beings across all realms of existence. The Djinn responsibilities for cosmic weather control extend their elemental mastery to universal scales, monitoring and managing energy flows that affect entire galaxies and dimensional regions. They serve as cosmic meteorologists, predicting and controlling phenomena that can influence the development of consciousness across vast regions of existence. Solar flares, dimensional storms, and cosmic energy fluctuations all fall within their area of responsibility and expertise. The scale of cosmic weather management requires Djinn to develop abilities that can influence forces operating on galactic and interdimensional levels. They must learn to work with energies that dwarf the power of entire star systems, channeling and directing such forces with precision that ensures beneficial effects while preventing destructive consequences. The knowledge and skill required for such cosmic weather work transforms participating Djinn into beings whose capabilities approach those of cosmic forces themselves. The Djinn role in cosmic agriculture involves facilitating the growth and development of consciousness across the universe, tending vast gardens of awareness that span multiple dimensions and encompass countless species. They serve as cosmic farmers, nurturing the conditions necessary for consciousness to flourish, while protecting developing awareness from threats that could prevent its proper growth and maturation. This cosmic agricultural work requires Djinn to understand the needs and growth patterns of consciousness in all its possible manifestations, from the most primitive forms of awareness to consciousness approaching divine levels. They must learn to provide appropriate nutrients, protection, and guidance for each stage of consciousness development, while avoiding interference that might prevent natural growth processes from occurring. The harvest cycles of cosmic consciousness development operate according to patterns that span eons and encompass the evolution of entire universal regions. The Djinn agricultural specialists monitor these vast cycles, determining when consciousness communities have achieved sufficient maturity to advance to higher levels of existence, and when intervention is necessary to protect developing awareness from premature exposure to advanced concepts or abilities. The cosmic recycling systems in which Djinn participate ensure that no consciousness or experience is ever permanently lost, creating universal systems that preserve and redistribute the wisdom and knowledge gained through countless lifetimes and civilizations. When beings, species, or entire civilizations complete their cosmic purposes, their accumulated wisdom is processed through cosmic recycling systems that make such knowledge available to other developing consciousness communities. The Djinn operators of cosmic recycling systems must master techniques for extracting, purifying, and redistributing consciousness-based resources without losing the essential qualities that make such resources valuable. They serve as cosmic librarians and resource managers, ensuring that the accumulated wisdom of the universe remains available to beings who can benefit from such knowledge while protecting sensitive information from inappropriate access or misuse. The environmental restoration projects in which Djinn participate address cosmic damage that results from consciousness conflicts, natural disasters, or failed experiments in cosmic development. These restoration efforts can involve rebuilding entire dimensions, restoring damaged consciousness communities, or repairing fundamental laws of physics that have been disrupted by cosmic catastrophes. The scale of cosmic environmental restoration requires Djinn to work with tools and techniques that operate beyond any earthly understanding of construction or repair. They must learn to rebuild reality itself, working with the fundamental forces that determine how existence operates while ensuring that their repairs integrate seamlessly with existing cosmic systems and do not create new problems or imbalances. The Djinn involvement in cosmic research and development encompasses projects that explore new possibilities for consciousness evolution, reality construction, and universal organization. They serve as cosmic scientists, conducting experiments that span multiple dimensions and time periods to discover new forms of existence and improved methods for consciousness development. These cosmic research projects require Djinn to push the boundaries of their own understanding and capabilities, exploring realms of possibility that challenge even their expanded awareness. They must learn to work with concepts and forces that exist beyond current cosmic understanding while maintaining the safety and stability of existing reality systems. The results of cosmic research conducted by Djinn influence the fundamental direction of universal evolution, determining how consciousness will develop in future eons and what new forms of existence will become possible. Their discoveries contribute to the ongoing expansion and complexification of reality itself, adding new dimensions of possibility to the cosmic curriculum that guides consciousness development across all realms of existence. The Djinn participation in cosmic emergency response systems positions them as first responders to crises that threaten universal stability or consciousness development. They serve as cosmic firefighters, paramedics, and disaster relief specialists, responding to emergencies that can affect entire galaxies or dimensional regions with consequences that might persist for eons. The cosmic emergencies that require Djinn response include consciousness plagues that can spread across multiple species, dimensional collapses that threaten to destroy entire realms of existence, and reality storms that can disrupt the fundamental laws governing universal operation. The Djinn emergency responders must be prepared to address any threat to cosmic stability, possessing abilities and knowledge that enable rapid response to unprecedented challenges. The training required for cosmic emergency response work transforms Djinn into beings whose capabilities exceed their normal species limitations, creating emergency specialists who can function effectively under conditions that would overwhelm ordinary consciousness. These cosmic emergency responders develop abilities that approach divine levels while maintaining the individual identity and moral judgment necessary for making critical decisions under extreme pressure. As we approach the deepest mysteries of Djinn existence and their cosmic purpose, we begin to understand that these beings of smokeless fire represent far more than supernatural entities with magical powers. They are active participants in the fundamental processes that govern existence itself, cosmic citizens whose responsibilities encompass the maintenance, development, and evolution of consciousness across all realms of being. The revelations that await us in the final exploration of Djinn mysteries will illuminate not only the true cosmic significance of these remarkable beings, but also the ultimate destiny that awaits all forms of consciousness as they evolve toward merger with the divine intelligence that governs the universe itself. The journey into the heart of Djinn existence becomes a journey into the very nature of cosmic purpose and the role that all conscious beings play in the ongoing creation and evolution of reality. The mysteries of Djinn prophecy and temporal manipulation reveal perhaps their most bewildering capability. Their relationship with time itself operates according to principles that shatter human understanding of causality and sequence. Unlike human consciousness, which experiences time as a river flowing in one direction from past to future, Djinn awareness exists simultaneously across multiple temporal dimensions, perceiving what was, what is, and what might be as equally accessible realities. This temporal omnipresence grants Djinn prophetic abilities that transcend simple fortune-telling or educated guesswork. When a Djinn speaks of future events, they are not making predictions based on current trends or mystical intuition. They are reporting direct observations of temporal realities that exist as concretely as any present moment. Though these future realities remain fluid and subject to change based on the choices made by conscious beings operating within linear time streams. The Djinn understanding of prophecy encompasses not single predetermined futures, but vast networks of possibility that branch and converge according to the decisions made by countless conscious beings. They perceive these probability webs as living landscapes that shift and transform in response to every choice, every action, every thought that influences the course of events. A Djinn prophet does not simply see what will happen, but rather observes the entire spectrum of what could happen and evaluates the likelihood of various outcomes based on current temporal momentum. The complexity of temporal perception creates unique challenges for Djinn, who attempt to communicate prophetic knowledge to beings trapped within linear time experience. Human consciousness lacks the conceptual framework necessary to comprehend simultaneous multiple futures, making it nearly impossible for Djinn to convey the full scope of their temporal observations. Instead, they must translate lives that human minds can process, multidimensional temporal data into linear narratively, losing much of the nuance and complexity that characterizes actual future reality. The selective nature of Djinn prophetic revelation reflects not just communication limitations, but also cosmic, ethical considerations that govern the appropriate sharing of temporal knowledge. The Djinn understand that premature knowledge of future events can create paradoxes that disrupt the natural flow of causality, potentially preventing the very outcomes that their prophecies describe. They must carefully balance the human desire for future knowledge against the cosmic necessity of preserving temporal integrity. The Djinn ability to manipulate temporal flow extends beyond simple observation to actual intervention in the progression of time itself. Advanced Djinn can create temporal bubbles where time moves at different rates, allowing for extended experiences within brief moments or enabling rapid completion of tasks that would normally require extended periods. These temporal manipulations operate through consciousness techniques that treat time as a malleable medium rather than an immutable constant. The creation of temporal anomalies requires Djinn to work with forces that exist at the very foundation of reality itself, manipulating the cosmic mechanisms that govern the relationship between consciousness and sequential experience. Such work carries enormous risks, as temporal manipulations that exceed appropriate limits can create cascading effects that disrupt causality across vast regions of space and time. The Djinn who master temporal arts must develop wisdom and restraint that match their technical capabilities. The temporal training undergone by Djinn who specialize in chronological work involves consciousness disciplines that would be utterly impossible for beings limited to linear time perception. These specialists must learn to maintain coherent identity while simultaneously existing across multiple time streams, experiencing past, present, and future as overlapping realities without losing their sense of individual continuity or purpose. The paradoxes generated by Djinn temporal manipulation create some of the most complex philosophical and practical challenges within their civilization. When Djinn alter past events to influence future outcomes, they must carefully manage the resulting contradictions to prevent reality from becoming internally inconsistent. These paradox resolution techniques operate through consciousness methods that transcend logical analysis, requiring intuitive understanding of temporal relationships that exist beyond rational comprehension. The Djinn role as temporal guardians positions them as protectors of causality itself, monitoring the flow of time across multiple dimensions and intervening when temporal disruptions threaten to create universe-threatening paradoxes. They serve as cosmic chronometer repairmen, detecting and correcting temporal anomalies before such disturbances can propagate into universal catastrophes that might unravel the fundamental structure of existence itself. The temporal communication networks operated by Djinn enable instantaneous information exchange across unlimited temporal distances, allowing beings in different time periods to communicate directly despite the chronological barriers that separate them. These temporal networks operate through consciousness channels that exist outside normal time flow, creating communication pathways that transcend the usual limitations of sequential causality. The ethical frameworks that govern Djinn temporal activities reflect deep understanding of the moral responsibilities that accompany power over time itself. These beings recognize that temporal manipulation affects not just immediate participants, but countless other consciousness communities across vast reaches of time and space. Their temporal interventions must consider consequences that might not become apparent for eons, while respecting the autonomy and development needs of beings who exist within normal time flow. The Djinn understanding of temporal ecology encompasses recognition that time itself functions as a living system with its own health, balance, and developmental needs. Excessive temporal manipulation can damage the fundamental structure of causality, creating temporal pollution that degrades the quality of sequential experience for all beings operating within affected time streams. The Djinn temporal specialists must balance their intervention activities against the need to preserve temporal environmental health. The temporal healing techniques developed by Jinn medical specialists address psychological and spiritual wounds that extend across multiple time periods, treating trauma that affects beings not just in their present moment, but throughout their entire temporal existence. These healing methods can literally repair damaged personal histories, removing traumatic experiences from the temporal record, while preserving the wisdom and growth that resulted from overcoming such challenges. The complexity of temporal medicine requires Jinn healers to understand consciousness not as a phenomenon limited to single time periods, but as an entity that exists simultaneously across all moments of its existence. Treatment must address not just current symptoms, but the temporal causes and consequences that create ongoing patterns of suffering across the patient's entire temporal trajectory. The Jinn mastery of temporal architecture enables them to construct buildings, cities, and entire civilizations that exist across multiple time periods simultaneously, creating structures whose different aspects become visible and accessible during different temporal phases. These temporal constructions serve as monuments to the Jinn understanding of time as a dimension that can be shaped and utilized just like physical space. The temporal libraries maintained by Jinn scholars contain not just records of past events, but actual access portals to historical moments, allowing researchers to observe and sometimes participate in events from any point in cosmic history. These libraries serve as repositories of living history, where the past remains accessible for study, verification, and sometimes correction when historical errors threaten to create temporal instabilities. The temporal art forms practiced by Jinn artists create aesthetic experiences that unfold across extended time periods, with different aspects of the artwork becoming visible and meaningful during different phases of temporal development. These temporal masterpieces can span centuries or millennia, creating artistic experiences that develop and mature alongside the consciousness of their observers. The Jinn relationship with temporal music involves compositions that exist simultaneously across multiple time periods, creating harmonies that resonate between past, present, and future to generate musical experiences that transcend the limitations of sequential sound production. These temporal symphonies can influence the emotional and spiritual development of listeners across their entire lifespans, providing ongoing guidance and inspiration that adapts to changing needs and circumstances. The temporal educational systems operated by Jinn institutions enable students to receive instruction directly from historical masters, learning complex subjects through direct temporal contact with beings who achieved mastery in previous eras. This temporal education transcends the limitations of recorded knowledge, providing access to the living wisdom of consciousness communities that might otherwise be lost to historical progression. The Jinn understanding of temporal relationships encompasses recognition that all conscious beings exist as temporal entities, whose identity and purpose extend across multiple time periods. Individual consciousness represents not a momentary phenomenon, but a persistent pattern that maintains continuity while undergoing constant development and transformation throughout its temporal existence. The temporal therapy techniques developed by Jinn counselors address psychological problems that stem from temporal displacement, temporal trauma, or temporal identity confusion that can result from exposure to non-linear time experience. These therapeutic methods help beings integrate their temporal existence, developing healthy relationships with their past, present, and future aspects while maintaining coherent identity across their entire temporal trajectory. The temporal economics practiced by Jinn civilizations involve trade and commerce that operates across multiple time periods, with goods and services exchanged between different temporal locations according to complex algorithms that account for temporal value fluctuations and chronological supply and demand variations. These temporal markets enable Jinn to optimize resource allocation across their entire temporal existence, rather than being limited to single-moment transactions. The temporal warfare conducted by Djinn military forces involves strategies and tactics that operate across multiple time periods simultaneously, with battles fought in the past to influence present conditions and future campaigns planned based on direct observation of their eventual outcomes. These temporal conflicts require military thinking that transcends conventional strategic analysis, incorporating variables and possibilities that exist beyond normal causality. The temporal diplomacy practiced by Djinn political specialists enables negotiation and treaty formation with beings from different time periods, creating agreements that account for the temporal development and changing needs of all participating parties. These temporal treaties must address not just current interests, but the evolving purposes and capabilities of consciousness communities across their entire temporal existence. The temporal justice systems operated by Djinn legal institutions address crimes and disputes that span multiple time periods, with legal proceedings that can examine evidence from past, present, and future to determine appropriate responses to temporal violations. These temporal courts must consider not just the immediate effects of criminal actions, but their consequences across the entire temporal trajectory of all affected parties. The temporal research conducted by Djinn scientists involves experimental methods that test hypotheses across multiple time periods, gathering data from past experiments while observing the long-term consequences of current research to develop understanding that transcends the limitations of single-moment scientific investigation. This temporal research methodology enables Djinn to develop knowledge that accounts for the full temporal complexity of the phenomena they study. The temporal agriculture practiced by Djinn farmers involves cultivation techniques that operate across multiple growing seasons and time periods simultaneously, optimizing crop development by managing temporal growing conditions that exist beyond normal sequential limitations. These temporal farming methods enable Djinn to produce food and other biological resources that transcend the constraints of normal agricultural cycles. The temporal manufacturing systems operated by Djinn industries create products that exist across multiple time periods, with different aspects of manufactured goods becoming available during different temporal phases according to the changing needs and capabilities of their users. These temporal products provide ongoing value that adapts to evolving circumstances rather than becoming obsolete as conditions change. The temporal transportation networks maintained by Djinn engineers enable travel not just between different spatial locations, but between different time periods, creating transit systems that allow beings to visit their own past or future while maintaining the temporal integrity necessary to prevent paradox formation. These temporal transportation systems serve as the infrastructure for Djinn civilization's temporal activities. The temporal communication protocols developed by Djinn information specialists enable coherent information exchange between beings operating in different time streams, translating temporal data into formats that can be understood by consciousness, limited to linear time experience, while preserving the essential meaning and context of temporal communications. The temporal medical systems operated by Djinn healthcare institutions address health problems that affect beings across their entire temporal existence, providing treatment that considers not just current symptoms, but the temporal causes and consequences that create ongoing patterns of illness and wellness throughout a patient's temporal trajectory. The temporal educational curricula developed by Djinn academic institutions provide learning experiences that unfold across multiple time periods, allowing students to develop understanding gradually while receiving instruction that adapts to their changing capabilities and needs throughout their temporal development. The temporal artistic movements practiced by Djinn cultural communities create aesthetic experiences that exist across multiple time periods, with different aspects of artistic works becoming visible and meaningful as observers develop the consciousness necessary to appreciate increasingly complex temporal relationships. The temporal philosophical traditions maintained by Djinn intellectual communities address questions about the nature of existence, consciousness, and reality that can only be fully understood through direct experience of temporal relationships that transcend normal sequential limitations. These temporal philosophies provide frameworks for understanding reality that account for its full temporal complexity. The temporal spiritual practices developed by Jinn religious communities enable direct communion with divine intelligence that exists beyond temporal limitations, creating worship experiences that transcend the constraints of sequential time to provide ongoing spiritual development that adapts to the evolving needs and capabilities of participating consciousness. The temporal psychological techniques practiced by Jinn mental health specialists address consciousness disorders that affect beings across their entire temporal existence, providing therapeutic interventions that consider the temporal causes and consequences of psychological problems while developing treatment approaches that promote healthy temporal identity integration. The temporal social systems maintained by Jinn communities create relationships and institutions that operate across multiple time periods, enabling social development that transcends the limitations of single-moment interaction to create ongoing community growth that adapts to the changing needs and capabilities of participating consciousness throughout their temporal existence. As we approach the final revelations of Jinn existence, we begin to understand that their mastery over temporal reality represents perhaps their most profound difference from human consciousness and their most significant contribution to cosmic order. The Jinn serve not merely as supernatural beings with magical abilities, but as temporal architects whose work shapes the very flow of time itself and determines how consciousness development unfolds across the vast reaches of existence. The ultimate mysteries that remain to be explored will reveal how Jinn temporal mastery connects to their cosmic purpose and divine relationship, illuminating the final secrets of beings whose existence spans the gap between mortal awareness and eternal divine intelligence. In understanding the Jinn relationship with time, we approach understanding of consciousness itself as a temporal phenomenon that transcends the boundaries of individual existence to participate in the eternal dance of cosmic evolution. The final revelation of Jinn existence brings us face to face with the most profound mystery of all: their ultimate destiny and the role they play in the cosmic drama that encompasses all conscious existence. These beings of smokeless fire are not merely supernatural entities who happen to possess remarkable abilities. They are active participants in a universal transformation that will reshape the very nature of reality itself. The Jinn understanding of cosmic evolution encompasses knowledge that extends far beyond the development of individual species or civilizations. They perceive existence itself as a vast organism undergoing constant transformation, with consciousness serving as the primary mechanism through which this cosmic evolution unfolds. Every thought, every choice, every moment of awareness contributes to this universal metamorphosis in ways that create ripple effects across dimensions and eons. This cosmic perspective explains why Jinn take such interest in human development, despite the apparent insignificance of our species in the vast scale of universal existence. They recognize that human consciousness represents a unique evolutionary experiment whose success or failure will influence the direction of cosmic development for countless future ages. Our species serves as a testing ground for forms of awareness that could determine whether consciousness evolution proceeds toward greater unity and wisdom or fragments into destructive competition and chaos. The Jinn role as cosmic gardeners extends beyond simple observation and occasional intervention to active participation in consciousness cultivation across multiple species and civilizations simultaneously. They serve as pollinators of awareness, transferring insights and capabilities between different consciousness communities to facilitate cross-species learning and accelerate overall development. This cosmic pollination work requires them to maintain simultaneous relationships with beings whose consciousness operates according to completely different principles and limitations. The hybrid consciousness forms that result from Jinn interaction with other species represent experimental prototypes for future evolutionary developments that could revolutionize the nature of awareness itself. These consciousness combinations test new possibilities for integrating different types of awareness while preserving the unique strengths that characterize each contributing species. The Djinn carefully monitor these consciousness experiments to determine which combinations produce beneficial results and which create instabilities that threaten the participating beings. The cosmic laboratory in which these consciousness experiments unfold encompasses the entire universe, with different regions serving as testing environments for specific types of awareness development. Solar systems become research stations. Galaxies serve as experimental zones, and entire dimensional realms function as controlled environments where consciousness can develop under carefully managed conditions. The Djinn serve as both researchers and test subjects in this cosmic laboratory, contributing their own consciousness to experiments while monitoring the results of their participation. The data collected from cosmic consciousness experiments influences decisions made at levels of reality that transcend even Djinn understanding. The results of consciousness development experiments conducted over millions of years inform cosmic intelligence about the optimal direction for universal evolution, determining what new forms of existence will be created and what existing forms will be allowed to continue their development. The Djinn serve as data collectors and reporters in this cosmic research project, providing information that shapes the future of existence itself. The cosmic graduation ceremonies that mark major transitions in consciousness development involve Djinn as both participants and administrators, celebrating the achievement of awareness milestones that represent significant steps in the evolution of cosmic intelligence. These ceremonies transcend simple recognition events to become actual transformation processes that fundamentally alter the nature of participating consciousness, granting new capabilities and responsibilities that match their evolved awareness levels. The cosmic citizenship that awaits sufficiently developed consciousness involves responsibilities and privileges that operate on universal scales, with graduated beings becoming active participants in cosmic administration and cosmic creation projects. The Djinn serve as mentors and guides for newly graduated cosmic citizens, helping them adapt to their expanded roles while ensuring that their increased capabilities are used in harmony with cosmic purposes, rather than for purely personal goals. And so we reach the end of our journey into the realm of beings forged from smokeless flame, though perhaps the word end is not quite appropriate. The Djinn, as we have discovered, exist beyond our linear understanding of beginnings and endings, operating in realms where time itself bends to their will, and where the boundaries between reality and possibility dissolve into something far more complex than human language can capture. What began as an exploration of ancient folklore has revealed itself to be something far more profound. The Djinn are not relics of primitive superstition, but living representations of consciousness possibilities that challenge everything we thought we knew about the nature of awareness, identity, and existence itself. They serve as mirrors, reflecting back to us the limitations of our own understanding, while simultaneously offering glimpses of what consciousness might become when freed from the constraints that currently bind human experience. The cosmic responsibilities we have uncovered, their role as gardeners of consciousness across the universe, their participation in the fundamental processes that govern reality itself, all point to a truth that extends far beyond the boundaries of any single mythology or religious tradition. The Djinn represent active participants in an ongoing cosmic evolution whose scope encompasses not just our world, but the entirety of existence across all dimensions and realms of being. Perhaps most remarkably, our investigation has revealed that the relationship between humans and Djinn is not one of separate species occasionally intersecting, but rather different expressions of the same fundamental cosmic process. The consciousness merger experiences, the gradual evolution of human awareness toward more Djinn-like capabilities, the emergence of hybrid forms of consciousness, all suggest that we are witnessing the early stages of a transformation that will ultimately reshape the nature of consciousness itself. The warnings embedded in the traditional stories, the elaborate protection rituals, the careful protocols for interaction, all take on new meaning when understood in this cosmic context. These are not simply methods for avoiding supernatural danger, but guidelines for navigating a transformation process whose implications extend far beyond individual human experience to encompass the future evolution of awareness itself. The Djinn, beings of smokeless fire, continue their ancient work in the spaces between worlds, tending the flames of consciousness that burn within all aware beings. They remain largely invisible to our limited perception, operating according to principles and purposes that exceed our current understanding. Yet their influence touches every aspect of existence, from the smallest moment of human intuition to the vast cosmic processes that govern the evolution of reality itself. The question that remains is not whether we will encounter the Djinn, for that encounter is already underway in ways both subtle and profound. The question is whether we will develop the wisdom, courage, and spiritual maturity necessary to participate consciously in the cosmic transformation they serve. The flames of consciousness burn within us all, waiting for the proper conditions to reveal their true nature and potential. In the end, the story of the Djinn becomes our own story, a tale of consciousness awakening to its cosmic nature and purpose. The beings of smokeless fire serve as harbingers of what we ourselves might become when the limitations of individual identity dissolve into the vast ocean of cosmic awareness that underlies all existence. The journey into their mysteries becomes a journey into the deepest possibilities of consciousness itself,